In Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 1, verses 22 and 23, he wrote this: Jews demand signs and Greeks look for wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and foolishness to the Gentiles. In other words, the Jews, they were looking for signs. The Greeks, on the other hand, were seeking deliverance through their minds. All the while, God had plainly revealed himself to the world by sending his son Jesus to die on the cross, something that was pure foolishness to both Jew and Greek alike. And in this Thursday morning Bible brief, we'll quickly look at those 3 points. Now, Paul lived in the 1st century AD, and as a much younger man, he had been a rising star in the Jewish religion. He had a very promising career ahead of him. That was until he became a Christian and a missionary at that. And it was during one of his missionary activities when he planted a church in the Greek city of Corinth. Now, Corinth was a leading city in ancient Greece, and while not on par with, say, Athens, it nevertheless was highly regarded for placing a high premium upon Greek philosophy, rhetoric, and wisdom. But here was a problem. Many of Paul's converts in the city of Corinth, they had come from humble origins. They weren't really all that educated, that well learned, not very eloquent. And so in Paul's absence, they felt very intimidated by their Jewish and Greek intellectual critics. You see, to the Jewish and Greek mind, especially the educated mind, the cross was pure folly. I mean, what kind of Messiah would have allowed mere mortals to crucify him? What kind of savior, what kind of deliverer was that? So let's now look at Paul's 3 main points. Point number 1, Christ's crucifixion was a stumbling block to the Jews because that wasn't supposed to happen to their Messiah. The Old Testament repeatedly foretold that there would be a future Messiah. Unfortunately, many Jews envisioned this Messiah only in earthly terms. They thought he was going to be this impressive leader, a military leader who would lead the nation of Israel into a holy war against the Romans who occupied Israel at the time. They certainly were not expecting a Messiah who instead would preach that they were to love their Roman enemies, that they were to turn the other cheek, that they were to go the extra mile. Point number 2, Christ's crucifixion was seen as foolishness to the Greeks because it offended their intellectual sensibilities. In the ancient world, death by crucifixion, it was reserved only for criminals, for traitors, for the dregs of society, so to speak, for deplorables. No Messiah would ever allow himself to suffer such a humiliating and degrading death. No Messiah would have been that stupid. Quickly and finally, point number 3. Now, as mentioned earlier, Paul had been a rising star in the Jewish religion. He had been trained by their top scholars and was steeped in Jewish theology. What's more is that we also know he was well acquainted with Greek philosophy and could hold his own in any philosophical debate. Now, this is all to say that unlike many Jewish scholars, and certainly unlike most Greek philosophers who viewed the crucifixion as foolishness, Paul, on the other hand, saw it as a demonstration of God's immense power and his supreme wisdom. That God chose to demonstrate his immense power through alleged weakness, his supreme wisdom through perceived folly. And only those who were willing to stop thinking in grand earthly terms, only those who were willing to let go of their intellectual egos could see that. And make no mistake, the same applies to us in the modern world of the 21st century. Are we willing to become blind in order to see God? Are we willing to become deaf in order to hear him?